right, welcome to the Product Podcast. Today's episode, I'm interviewing Mike Tang, who is a fintech product manager. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. We actually met at the last Product Tank event that Aaron had told me about. And we were talking to some guys and everyone was like, "You got to get this guy on the podcast. He's a superstar PM." So I wanted to know a little bit about your story and how you got into product management.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, just a brief introduction about myself. So I actually have been like a product manager for around 9 years. So for the recent 5 years, basically I'm major or work at fintech relevant companies. So for example, I'm working at like a PSP company, which is like payment service provider. It support the merchant to process the payments. So when you as a customer on the e-commerce site, and then when you do the checkout, actually it's our company to process all the stuff behind the scene. So
Mm.
that's the uh, payment processing service provider. And now before like my previous company, I was working at Paydi, which is a buy now pay later service.
Mm.
And at that moment, I mean, buy now pay later was pretty famous in the past 2 or 3 years ago. But right now, it seems a little bit like cool down a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what was that? What was that company in Australia that first championed this? What was it called? The first one in that thing?
Terpay, I remember.
Oh yes,
From
Afterpay. Yes.
Australia, yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
from US is a firm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
yeah,
the one in
they are
Australia.
pretty dominate.
Yes, exactly. So Payday was like the Japanese version, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Payday is pretty dominate in Japanese market. Yeah,
Nice, nice.
I
Nice.
can. I'm pretty sure number one, I guess. Number one, buy now pay later.
So I guess what were you always in fintech or were you in other industries as well?
Yeah, like so I come from Taiwan. So before I relocated to Japan, I was working at like another bank, more like digital bank. And before bank, I also work more like general internet companies like live streaming and also uh, online travel agency.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
So
that's my first, I mean, my first experience online travel agency as a product manager.
in terms of fintech, why fintech? What I guess interests you into that?
Yeah, so like I remember when I left, like yeah, at the moment I basically have worked as a product manager for 4 years, and then I started to think about, okay, right now I'm getting older and older, and
Mm,
of course the compensation uh goes higher and higher, right? And then I start to figure out, okay, I think as a product manager, there are more and more young guys going to join as a product manager. So what's my moat over there or my competitive advantage.
mm,
And then after some further thinking, I start to find out, okay, I should be more specialized in a
mm,
sector. And that sector should have two characteristics. The first one is like, okay, this sector should be like looks promising. That sector will grow pretty significant in the next 5 years.
mm,
You have to guess about that or estimate that by yourself. And then the second characteristic is like, okay, you have to find out what's the current status of the talent pool. So I have to think about, okay, how many product manager are there in that sector or experienced product manager? And then at the moment, like 5 years ago, I'm thinking like there are two sectors. One is AI, and then another one is fintech. I can feel that the trend of those two sectors. But however, I'm more like business background instead of technology background. So after you assess the external environments, you have
mhm.
to assess your capability at the same time, try to make a match, right? And then I found out, okay, at the moment, fintech was not much that mature, and they are looking for the product manager who are really good at software management, because
Mhm.
there are some product manager from traditional bankings, but they are really bad at like design the software and to
Right.
think more like a software driven. They even don't know what agile is. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
they are more focused on finance stuff. And
Hmm.
then I see, okay, that's good. So that's why Line Bank hired me at the moment. It's like, okay, they already have several finance product managers, but they are trying to hire a software product manager to collaborate with those uh, existing product managers. So you can design like smooth user experience on the mobile apps, also the webs. Yeah.
Product managers usually have one or two backgrounds, right? Either technical or, business focused, right? How do you think your background in business has helped you in this kind of technical role as a product manager, being able to, be that glue between the business and the tech side?
Yeah. So I would say actually that's the point is like compared to AI sector, fintech sector doesn't require, I mean, most of the fintech company doesn't require, I mean, product manager that super technical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you need to understand the basic knowledge of about API or some structures about the system. But I mean, that's the basic level, and you can reach it by yourself, by self-learning. It's not
Mm,
really hard. And then, however, in the fintech field, they are more, I mean, a lot of service are user facing or
mm,
end customer facing instead of AI, right? Right now, there are a lot of AI companies more like to B service.
mm,
So however, in fintech, there are more to C service. So
mm.
they require a product manager who can have, I mean, not only development knowledge, but also like user experience. You can do even some user interviews so that you can design your product well for your end customers.
Absolutely.
And of course, because fintech also like more like derived from traditional bankings, right? They try to democratize those financial products. So, I mean, there are still some managers from traditional banking, and they are also pretty business-oriented thinking. So
Hmm.
that's why, I mean, as a product manager, I can have similar language with those managers. Like we
Mm.
communicate with in business, but however, when I talk to engineers, I also have basic technologies knowledge, right? I can communicate with both sides fluent.
That's really good. Yeah, that's essential. I think that a lot of people, when they're thinking about getting into product management, they think it's maybe a highly technical role, but in reality, it's just you have to be a good communicator and have basic knowledge of both sides, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like you're fitting into that pretty well. So you brought up, obviously democratizing like financial services, and that's what kind of like fintech does, right? Can you give us an example of when you saw this impact, right, of democratizing, financial services firsthand in your experience?
Yeah. So as you see, like for example, I'm working at Dejika right now, which is a payment service provider uh, company. So how we democratize that is like, okay, if you don't have PSP service, then as a merchant, you have to integrate each payment method by yourself. So, for example, in Japan, there are a lot of payment methods like
Mm,
PayPay, MaruPay, and credit cards, of course, and Konbini, like a bunch. I mean,
everything. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So you can imagine as a merchant, or let's say you are selling something online, and then I mean, your core business is selling good stuff, trying to find good stuff for your customers. Your core business is not trying to spend a lot of time integrating with different payment methods. So
Hmm.
it's super time consuming. And then sometimes because you, as a merchant, you have lower transaction volume, so you are not able to get a competitive price
Hmm.
compared to Amazon, compared to Rakuten, right?
Right.
So yeah, and with PSP partner, like we have pretty modern API structure. So you can imagine if you integrate with banking directly, their API usually is pretty, I mean, hard to integrate.
Yes.
But with us, we only have single API products, and we already integrate various payment methods for you. So
Mm,
for merchants, you just need to integrate with our API once.
mm.
Then you can support all the payment methods we have integrated with. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty incredible because I remember, I lived in Vietnam before and they would only do either cash or credit and then like maybe some other weird like QR code thing, right? Same in the US where it's like, okay, maybe you have some credit cards and like some other digital payment things, but it's not as extensive as here in Japan. I was so like shocked when I saw that those little plaques or like stickers that they have at the cash register and seeing like 50 different like payment methods, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys, I guess, manage all of that, right? How do you manage like all these different companies allowing all these different, right, payment methods? It must be pretty difficult.
I mean, it's pretty a big burden actually. So that's why we are trying to talk with, like, sometimes we talk to payment method provider directly.
Mm,
So I can say, for example, PayPay, we integrate with them directly, right?
mm,
But sometimes we also have some intermediary players between us and the payment method provider. And
mm.
that kind of intermediary players also can support several payment methods. So
Uh,
you can imagine it's more like a multiple layer
yeah,
between the end customer and the origin of the payment service provider. And
right.
there are several layers. So I mean, there are a lot of business consideration between that. So sometimes if we integrate with intermediary players, we may get a better pricing,
Mm,
or we can reduce our burden, of course. But however, sometimes our clients may want to have a more stable service level. Then
mm,
we may have to I mean, ignore the intermediary player and talk to the provider directly.
uh,
And then, so there are a lot of nuances between them. Like usually, like think about cost, think about the stability,
mhm.
think about the efficiency, and also there are some business relationship because if we just ignore the intermediary players and maybe in other business sector, we may get some hurt from that partner at the same time.
It
So
sounds
there
like
are a bunch of stuff you have to consider. Yeah.
It sounds like it, man. And as a fintech PM, is that something that you're in constant contact with those companies and managing those type of relationships, or is that more the business side, or where do you step in? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, maintenance, maintaining the relationship, there's like we have a dedicated team called
Mm,
partnership team, and they are like deal this kind of stuff pretty well. So as a product manager, I'm thinking about, okay, we got this deal. We are able to integrate with these payment methods. And what's, I mean, you have to consider how to integrate into your API products.
mm,
That's the first. And second, you also have to think about your pricing because you have the pricing from your writer, right? And you have to make a markup on
mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
However, this markup is also I mean, uh, pretty different based on client's transaction volume. So you
Mm.
have like a list price on your website, but sometimes you have a giant clients comes in, and then you say, okay, I will give you a special price, something like that. And also, like, there are some business strategies think about, okay, because of these giant clients, and that will be a perfect testimonials for our company. So there are additional value, and then I mean, we are willing to provide another discount for them,
Wow.
something like that. And then also like for me, I'm building a new initiatives. So I think as a product manager, you have to think about the stages of release.
Mm,
So I mean, we are dealing with financial service, right? It's relatively high risk
mm,
stuff. So you have to release your new features step by step. So I can say, for example, actually, one of my initiative is like we I only rely on our GTM team or sales team to approach some clients secretly
oh.
and then try to get one, two, or or maximum three pilots. We call them pilots.
Hmm.
And then to integrate with our API and to see how that new feature works.
Hmm.
And of course, we will give some incentive because they are our pilots. They also, I mean, bear with some risks.
Right.
And then after you observe how they use your service, and then you, of course, first you are observe the stability, and then second you are observe their requirements, feedback to polish your products.
Hmm.
Then second stage you are going to like, okay, I'm going to find because we have thousands of existing merchants, and you may want to send like an email or marketing stuff to inform your existing merchants that, oh, there's some new stuff you can try out, right? And then the third stage, maybe you public your service on the website
Hmm.
and on your portal. And and that stage, you should ensure your new feature is self-serviced.
Right. Right.
So in
Right.
the beginning, it's more like we complete all the configuration for our clients. It's more like manual stuff. But at the end, when you want to public that, you should ensure that's self-service. Otherwise, you are not able to handle uh, a huge amount of clients at the
Right.
moment. Yeah.
Yes. So you brought up the secrecy part, right? Like, making sure that you get this pilot done, through the right channels so that, obviously it's not out in the open or in like people
Yeah.
can reject it, right? I mean, how important is that to have those, to build those relationships in those channels so that you can pull off something like this to be a net benefit for those companies?
Yeah, exactly. So I think I want to bring up one key point here, like because I worked for to B and to C products in my career path, and I found out like for to B products, usually it's not that easy to conduct a user interview or client interview when
Mm,
you have nothing, right? When I work at 2C company, you are able to like conduct a lot of interviews
yeah.
without anything, just with a concept or a wireframe, and then you start interviewing. But in the 2B world, I mean, everyone is so busy.
Yeah.
No one will give you any time without at least an MVP, right?
Right.
So that's the problem. So that's why usually, like in in my current company, we have to build phase one, like MVP stuff, and then ensure some key components works well.
Mm,
And then we make a demo or we try to approach like some potential clients. And as a product manager, you have to define the trait of your, I mean, preferred pilots,
hmm.
right? For example, some trait like, okay, what's the transaction volume the client should be or the price should be? And also which industry the client should be, that kind of stuff. You have to define those so that your stakeholders, like marketing team or your sales team, can follow that direction and try to approach the right pilots for you. Because you already have a product or even the APIs for those pilots, right? So they are more willing to have conversation with you and then integrate with you later on if they feel good.
For somebody who's, I guess, maybe not so experienced, right, with doing this type of process or, following all these set rules and like this set structure, how could they succeed in a position that you're in right now? Does it take a lot of trial and error? Does it take a lot of mentoring? How did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I think basically first you have to mimic how the senior product managers or how your manager
Mm,
bring a new initiative from zero to one. You have to observe by yourself first and try to mimic that and try to write down like what's their think framework of
hmm.
thinking, something like that. And second will be, I think as a product manager, you have to have a regular conversation with your stakeholders, right? So
Mm,
actually, I also build my own thoughts based on the feedback from marketing team and the sales team because they know more nuances about how to approach the potential clients, and there are a lot of tactics So you want to know, okay, what's their tactics in different circumstances,
Hmm.
and then you have to, I mean, remember that. So for example, like I have two initiatives. One is for giant platforms. Another one is for small and medium business. Then I have a totally different uh, go-to-market strategy.
Mm.
And your go-to-market strategy should align with their, I mean, your stakeholders' feedback or their tactics. So it's more like a mutual uh, conversation or a mutual alignment instead of you just think all of them and then ask your stakeholder to execute that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it sounds like that to be a successful PM, you have to be somebody who's really curious and willing to reach out and ask those difficult questions or, put yourself, in a situation where you might not know, but you're open to learning a lot, especially at a fintech company. And that brings me to my next question, right? What is the difference between being a fintech PM versus in other domains?
As a fintech PM, as I mentioned, we are more like regulated sector, right?
Ah, yes.
So I think as a product manager in fintech, you have to deal with more stakeholders
Mm.
than other companies. Like for example, I think one of my key stakeholders is legal and compliance.
Ah, yeah.
So usually like, okay, so here's the point. Why, I mean, fintech companies usually want to hire experienced product managers who have worked at fintech. The reason is like there are several domain know-hows, and
Hmm.
one of it is like you need to have the basic understanding about regulation. You don't need to go to super deep, but you need to have a logical, I mean, instinction
Yes.
about that. That's why when you design a new product or a new feature, when you design that, you think about user experience, you think about revenue, business objectives. However, at the end, you have to start trigger your instincts, like, okay, how risk is it is,
Hmm.
and then will it, I mean, obey to the regulation in Japan, or if there's any confliction. So you have to think about that by yourself first.
Hmm.
Then, of course, you are not 100% sure, right? So you need to initiate a conversation with your legal and compliance stakeholders.
Uh,
But I mean, you need to bring up the questions to consult them, not just say, hey, I want to do this, and then ask them to assess the risk. No, that's not the way to work. It's more like you need to assess by yourself and bring all your concerns and questions
right.
to your stakeholders. And of course, they will answer you like, okay, this works, this not works. And if it doesn't work, then what's the alternative?
Mm,
If there's a workaround, something like that.
right.
So that's why, I mean, without domain knowledge, you are not able to assess your stuff
Right.
beforehand. That's one of the key points. And I mean, right now you have AI, right? It's super good. So actually, nowadays I even use AI to support me to investigate the Japanese regulations. I mean,
Mm,
I'm I'm not good at Japanese, so I just use English to ask AI, and the AI is able to grab all the materials and translate all of them to English, and then I can learn from that. So, I mean, even AI, yeah, I mean that's a good channel for you to accumulate your basic knowledge of regulation.
100%. Yeah, AI is helping us get up to speed with a lot of things, especially when we need to learn new skills or like you said, regulations, it's super helpful. My question for you with regards to the risk being a key stakeholder, has there ever been a time where you had an innovative like idea or solution, right? And the risk department was like, "Oh no, that's too risky. We can't do that." Right? Do you feel like it might stifle your innovation or do you feel like fintech risk companies are aware that they need to innovate and are a bit more, I guess, helpful in that sense? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think in the traditional banks, their legal and compliance are more like, hey, we should not try it
Yes.
because of ABC,
Yeah.
right? They just like stop you
Mm,
to innovate. But in fintech, because it's like, okay, I mean, there are a combination of technology and I mean finance, right?
mhm.
So as long as you have technology spirit, you always need to innovate something. Otherwise, our client just integrate with the banking or the payment service provider. They
Right.
don't need us, right? Yeah. So the problem is here, our mindset is like when we talk to legal and compliance, you always can say, hey, this is high risk. Then next, as a product manager, I always ask, what's the workaround? What's the alternative? I need this initiative because we need to increase our company's revenue, and that's also good for the entire company. But we have to do this. But I'm open to how we do this, right?
Hmm.
That's the key point. And then another point is as a product manager, you can do more. For example, I basically monitor, I can say monitor like Stripe, like this kind of global competitors. And
Hmm.
they are also pretty good in Japan. So I will try out their like end-to-end user flow and to see, okay, how they implement that new feature and then bring that information or bring that in knowledge back to our stakeholders to say, hey, okay, you said this is high risk stuff, but however, it seems the industry leader have the same practice as mine. Then you have to convince me what's the risk of there. If you
Ah.
cannot, I will just go. I will just follow it, right? Because
Exactly.
they already do that, and they are like compliant with the regulation. So
Hmm.
I mean, why not, right? So as a product manager, you need to try to find out a lot of methods to facilitate your conversation with different stakeholders.
Sounds like, working for a bank, they're more like, no, 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 because it's easier and they have a ton of money anyways. But fintech companies, they're more like, no, but how can we work around it with you, right? Like, yeah, like let's find a solution together so that the company can grow and we can be leaders in the field. What do you think the future of fintech is going to be like?
Yeah, I think in the future, currently I'm thinking about like uh, for because I'm working in payment side, so I can be more like specific for Japan. Uh, I think there's a new trend is about stable coin. So
Mm.
as far as I know, like I think last month the Japanese government just approved USDC.
Oh, really? I did not
Yeah,
know
exactly.
that.
USDC in Japan in March, actually, just last month. So I mean, there's like because the issuer of the USDC is Circle,
Mm,
is I remember from US, I guess. And then there's a partner in Japan called SBI Holdings. So they are more like a partnership and going to issue the USDC.
hmm.
So with USDC, so the pain point here is like for my company or for other PSP companies, we always has to pay out to our clients at the end, right? Maybe weekly or monthly, or even maybe 1 day, 2 day if they are giant clients. And then we found out first, especially for the overseas payouts, you have to wait, I mean, 1 or 2 days at the least. And
Hmm.
then with a big a big chunk of fee, right?
Yep.
That's really an obstacle for our clients. Especially we have like 80% of our clients are small and medium business.
Hmm.
And that kind of they need to be more pay more attention on their cash flow.
Hmm.
So they really prefer about like shorter payment payout period. However, as long as you pay out more frequent, you will be charged more bank transfer fee, right? That's
Right.
pretty makes sense. And then with stablecoin, I expect maybe there will be uh like just few minutes.
Hmm.
So we can pay out as you want. with a super low transfer fee.
Oh, wow.
I think that will be a trend for uh, our sector. I mean, a plus
Mm,
at least. And then I think another part more high level. Actually, I'm also uh, observe the health tech
mm.
domain because, as you know, I mean, a lot of elder population
Yes.
in
Big
Japan,
time.
right?
Yes,
And
yes.
then I already can name some startups or even conglomerates. They already have several subsidiaries
Hmm.
focused on health tech
Hmm.
business, right? And then because of the health tech business, I think uh, the insurance product can be a can be like more like a bundled. So right now, imagine when you buy an insurance product, you have to buy, for example, one like entire life
Hmm.
and maybe one insurance product for a specific disease, something like that. But in the future, I think with health tech, because there will be more and more digital health tech service, like mental diagnosis, or even like regular uh, conversation with your doctor, right? So I think insurance will be a trend to be embedded into that kind of digital software product.
Mm.
So when you get the service from maybe the hospital or something online, then first, I imagine you need to subscribe a package to
Right.
get the service. And later on, I can like, as a software platform, I will try to upsell you the insurance based on the service you opt in on our platform, right? So that will be a case of fintech as well. So I mean, currently you just buy the insurance product from banking directly.
Hmm.
It's fine, but it's not flexible. It's super rigid. But now with the software, there will be a really good channel or the use scenarios over there. So first you get the treatment digitally.
Hmm.
And then next step, you will think, hey, it looks super expensive. How can I reduce the burden? Then you may have the requirements to find the proper insurance over there.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think try to that's also another topic I focus on. Try to more like fintech lies the insurance product.
Oh.
So if you want to embed your insurance product on platform, first you need to build your API so that that platform can retrieve your insurance product and display your product on their platform for their end customers. And
Hmm.
then once their end customer want to apply for your insurance product, then the platform will call your API and to tell them, okay, who want to apply for this product, and you can process with that in your uh, backend.
Mm. Interesting.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's also another stuff I'm looking for. So it's basically like, okay, right now I'm PSP, and then my use case is on e-commerce websites. But as insurance issuers, your use scenarios will be in the digital healthcare or healthcare services or platforms, something like that.
Yeah, as the population ages, obviously, our generation and maybe a little bit older, we're used to technology now. So I definitely see more and more older people, meaning us, potentially 30 years from now, being able to handle these types of payment systems and stuff. What about, the OG-san or Oba-sans that are around that can barely type on a phone now? I mean, in 10 years' time, do you think that this will be the case, or do you think it'll be further down the line?
10 years later, I think the Ojisan and Obasan at the moment should be more familiar with current technology, right?
Hopefully, hopefully.
So, I mean, yeah, there's basically a gap
Mm,
over there. But I expect like because of the I believe maybe 3 or 5 years later, you are able to use the voice
Mm,
as
that's
your
interesting.
interface, right? So
Mm-hmm.
我就让我爸上 can just say, "Hey, I want to." Could AI just say, "Hey, could you do me a investigation
Right.
about the insurance products?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I care about the price, or I care about like just tell the AI several attributes that you care the most, right? And then AI will respond to you with a voice, and then
Right.
it's more like a conversation. And at
Mm,
the end, AI should be able to recommend one or two products to you, and then
yeah.
you can see the details. You just click on those two products, right? And to see check more details and then
Yeah.
complete the process.
Immediately, what comes to mind though is like maybe OG-san or boss-san that's like really hard at hearing, and they're like, "Huh? What did you say?" Right? You know, say it
Yeah.
again, right? So yeah, hopefully it gets more sophisticated and helps them. I think that having voice will help, but it's got to be patient. The AI's got to be patient. Speaking of AI, right? They have these agents that are available now. OpenAI released one that's like $200 a month, right? Where you can basically do anything with it. Do you think that these agents will one day replace product managers?
Yeah, I think at the least those AI agents can actually help senior product managers who already have like a enough domain knowledge or
Mm,
enough thinking frameworks. Because I think when I use AI, at least you need to know what are the good questions
hmm
to ask AI. Otherwise, AI cannot provide you the proper answers or materials. But how could you ask the right questions? Especially because you have enough label of
hmm
instinctions or knowledge that enable you to do that, right? So I would say, and then right now I feel AI is more like my associate product manager
Okay.
because when I was a junior product manager, I was asked to do some research for
hmm
my manager, right? And
Uh,
then that kind of research stuff uh, can be done by AI right now if you ask good questions. So that's the key point. So I would say first, senior product managers are benefit from this trend. But however, it will may impede the junior product managers because right now we don't need to hire junior product managers because AI can do those kind of stuff. And
hmm
then as long as you don't have junior product managers, there will be a talent gap,
hmm
right?
Yep.
Because how could you be senior before being a junior?
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's the first one. And the second one, I think with AI, you are able to build your MVP or decrease the cost of try and error significantly.
Mm.
So that's what I think is like there will be more and more product managers in the future may become entrepreneurs. It's like,
Oh.
okay, every day we think about business, we think about technology, we think several dimensions. Uh, so I mean, a lot of product manager may have like ambition or that kind of thoughts, like maybe someday I can build my own product, my own business. So I think AI can uh, catalyze this kind of trend, make more people become entrepreneurs because the cost becomes lower and lower.
Mm. If you were to one day say, "Hey, I'm sick and tired of working for a company. I want to start my own business," would you do something in fintech or would it be a different field for you?
Yeah, I think it will be a different field actually, because I mean that's the trade of fintech, right? Because if you want to get the ticket into this sector, first you need to get acquire some license.
Mm.
Those license are cost,
Mm.
and then a lot, and then of course you have to hire several people. and then to meet that kind of criteria because they need to do a lot of stuff to obey the regulation, right? So I think at least for the cost at the beginning is pretty high for me. So I think I will try some other business ideas first instead
Mm.
of, I mean, I will avoid highly regulated sectors
You're
first.
right. Right.
Yeah, because I'm not rich enough at this moment.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, some of those licenses are super expensive, man. It's a huge process, and then you might fail, right? So then it's like you
Exactly.
spend all that money, and then what, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely see that. Any interests that you could share with us potentially?
I mean, so far I'm trying to figure it out actually.
Mm,
Um, but I remember like few years ago, I joined like more like a consultant with my previous colleague, ex-colleague, and then we tried out like a street dance. So we built an app,
hmm.
and then we record the street dance teachers tutorials, like, and
Oh, okay,
then
street
you,
dancing, like
yeah,
break
street
dancing?
dancing.
Okay,
It's like, yeah, exactly, like hip hop,
okay,
locking, and freestyle, that
nice.
kind of stuff. Yeah, and then we just build it and then try to see, hey, those high school students or even college students, are they interested in that? And then, because like when you try to learn street dance or street dancing, you have to go to a studio, right? Physically.
Yep.
And it's sometimes really hard and time consuming. So if you
Hmm.
can learn it from your app immediately, then and then you can repeat it again and again. And another key point is like, yeah, remember like 15 years ago, I also learned street dancing.
Oh,
And
nice.
I mean, as a beginner, you will feel embarrassed
Hmm.
with your skill. And then you will just find out, oh my God, like all other students can dance really well, and
Hmm.
you look like just like a dumb, right? Over there. So embarrassing. So, but with the online app, you can accumulate your basic skills
Hmm.
in advance. And
Mm.
then it's more like, okay, so we democratize the dancing online, and then you can, once you have basic skills or basic label, you can get into the studio physically, and
Okay.
you will no longer feel embarrassing because,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
that's
that's
also
cool.
another pain point. Yeah,
That's
we tried it out before, yeah, few years ago, but I mean, however, it failed. But I think I want to try it again, maybe
yeah, why
sometime in
not?
the future. Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe in a different market, maybe you do a little bit better. And now that breakdancing was in the Olympics, for example, right? Maybe you'll have a little bit more traction. Maybe it's more interesting, especially with TikTok, right? TikTok, people
yeah,
dance all the time, right? If you could somehow, like get Dance Dance Revolution, the game at the arcades where you're like physically dancing and stuff that people go crazy on. If you do something like that, mixed with TikTok, mixed with, like some sort of tutorial or like social aspect, it could blow up. You never know. That's
yeah.
just
At that moment, we were trying to detect your gesture with teacher's gesture, but it was so complicated, and we were
Mhm.
not able to achieve that. But now with AI, maybe, I mean, it becomes much more realistic.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely test the demand, see if it's there. It sounds really promising. Whenever you have a problem, right, that you're solving for yourself, you're a little bit more passionate about it. And yeah, I think anyone can be successful if they go down that route, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it, man. PMs make really good entrepreneurs, right? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think because every PN has to think stuff from various perspectives. So let's say as an engineer, of course you have to think various aspects as well, but it's
Hmm.
basically in technology
Hmm.
domain, right? But as a PM, you need to think various aspects with various domain.
Hmm.
And those domains are all essential for a company. So that's why, I mean, it's more like you already do that in your daily practice. You think from legal and compliance, you think from risk, you think about how to release your product. and then how to approach the market, and how to ensure you have enough profits, revenues on that.
Hmm.
And then how could you find out the pain points after the release, right? Because there are always some pain points you did not anticipate. And then go back to the technology part to say, hey, okay, there are pain points, and how could we fulfill those
Mm.
points? So it's
Hmm.
more like keep iterating, iterating, iterating. And inside of each iteration, you have several dimensions to consider with. And
Absolutely. Hmm.
yeah, so as a entrepreneur, I would say it will be more advanced,
Yeah.
right? You have
Hmm.
more domains you have to think of. But I mean, the mindset is quite similar, I guess.
100%. Absolutely. As long as you have the stakeholders, like you're saying, in mind, particularly with your customers, like PMs, they're constantly talking to their customers, constantly talking to those who are on both sides, right? All over the place, right? They have all the main elements of a business in mind. And yeah, I think that if you can do that as a founder, you'll be very successful for sure. So
Yeah.
awesome. And yeah, it's been a really insightful discussion with regards to fintech, product management, AI. It's been awesome. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think that we should have covered?
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, that's
awesome. Awesome.
pretty comprehensive, actually.
Good. Excellent. So, as you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest left a question for you, and then you'll leave a question for the next guest. Okay?
Okay.
So, the question that's been left for you is, what self-development book have you read, and how has it helped you with your life?
Yeah, maybe I can share one book I am reading right now.
Hmm,
Yeah,
okay.
just like I bought it a few days ago. And the book is like, the title is Best Story Wins. So it's
Mm,
more like a storytelling technique, but for in business scenarios.
okay.
So I'm actually sometimes I have to make a presentation for my stakeholders to
Hmm.
align their thoughts, also align our direction. So I just use that kind of framework in the book, uh, try to build some new decks for our for my stakeholders. So I mean
Hmm.
the framework is more like, I mean interesting stuff is like, okay, when you start a meeting, there's a point I want to share is like you try to find the shared agreement between you and your stakeholders.
Hmm.
So like you want to get more yes from their mind.
Hmm.
So at the end of the meeting, they are more likely to say yes to your proposal.
Right.
That's the concept. Yeah.
Yep.
So how could you find a shared experience? It's like you need to think about their pain points. For example, I'm the topic is like I'm going to onboard a giant merchant, and they are going to bring a lot of accounts to
Hmm.
us. So when I talk to maybe our operation team, the pain point is like, oh my God, we are going to have a huge workload
Hmm.
to screen a huge number of the accounts, right? That's basically a terrible stuff for them. I mean,
Hmm.
a burden for them. So you have to say, okay, the shared agreement is like first, because of that, we are able to get more revenue, of course, something like that. And second, I'm also have a sympathy,
Hmm.
sorry, empathy with you. Like I already foresee there's a big burden on your team.
Yeah.
So you have to make that kind of as your opening,
Yeah.
right? So they will be feel they are heard, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
after that, you can bring up your solutions, and then they will say, okay, yes. So even though during the middle of the presentation, you are like try to divide the stuff into several challenges, like
Hmm.
challenge A, challenge B, challenge C, and make sure you address each challenge
Yep.
first instead of illustrate all the challenge and provide a solution at the end. that's not a good practice. You should like challenge A, challenge B, solution B. So you can bring this kind of up and down
Yep.
in your presentation.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's more like you should provide like okay, you are bring your stakeholders go through an adventure and which at the end you should have a bright I mean,
Yeah.
bright future or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm trying to make my like my meetings or my presentations more interesting. I mean, that's I'm trying to do
Well,
because of
that
this book.
that
Yeah.
is a great book to read for sure. Storytelling is a superpower, and throughout history, people who have been the most successful are the ones who can tell the best stories, not the people with the best ideas. It's the people who can tell the best stories, right? If you can lead somebody along a story, the audience will follow you and want to buy in to what you're saying. That happens in business, it happens in life, it happens everywhere. So that's a really great book that you're reading, and I'm looking forward to actually reading it myself. Who's the author? Can you who's the author of the book?
Yeah, I forgot the author, but just this one. Mark Edwards.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that one out because I love
I can
storytelling
share
as
you the
well.
link.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be cool, man. I love storytelling, and I actually help founders with their pitching as well, and this is great for that type of work as well. So really appreciate the share. All right, cool. Now, Mike, it's your turn. What question do you have for my next guest?
What's the North Star of your life, and what are the proxy metrics look like?
Okay, so if I'm hearing it correctly, what's the North Star metric for your life, and what are some of the sub metrics that will help get you there? Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, cool. That's a great question, man. I think I'd have to think about
Yeah,
that myself as
a
well.
bit a
It,
bit tough.
it is tough. It is definitely tough, but I think that's a good one. It gets people thinking about their life in stages, right? And how to reach your goals. I think that's super important to have frameworks like that. Well, Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast. How can people connect with you? Is LinkedIn the best way, or do you have any
Yeah,
other? Hmm?
you can just search my name via my LinkedIn,
Okay.
via LinkedIn. So basically, you just key in Mike Tang, and you
Okay.
should be able to find me.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll link that down below, and I hope to see your future dance app on the App Store. I want to check it out, But thank you so much, Mike, for your time, and we'll chat to you soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Product Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to share your PM stories, challenges, struggles, or insights with us on a future episode, please get in touch with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you on and keep this conversation going. Until next time, happy building, everyone.